weeks.
I would not be surprised at all if Brendel and McGlinchey got offers that exceeded what they want to pay, and I wouldn't be surprised if they both left. I mean, Brendel is kind of their own creation. I mean, they kind of discovered him, but he was a Pro Bowl alternate in a league where offensive line plays at an all-time low, and coming out of a scheme that's obviously as respected as any. I could see him getting some offers. I mean, teams like the Bears have a whole $100 million of cap room. There are some teams that can just come at you and say, we'll take this guy and that guy, and you're not going to be able to do much about it. I think McGlinchey could easily wind up in Chicago, and Brendel I could see somewhere else as well. Do you think that they're fortified internally? I mean, could Jalen Moore play? You mentioned Colton, but is Jalen Moore a right tackle? Is Spencer Burford potentially kicked out to right tackle, or is that too tall of an ask? Do they like Alfredo Gutierrez or any of their backup tackles? I don't know much about their backup tackles, to be frank. And have you heard anything about their depth as far as do they have anybody internally they think could replace those two guys?
Yeah, well, let's say that they lost Brunskill, for example, who was their top
He's
interior,
also a free agent.
who's also a free agent, interior lineman backup this past year. I think Nick Zakel, a 2022 draft pick, kind of slips into that role, the backup center, the backup guard. As far as tackle, it's McKivitz. McKivitz ended the season as the backup right tackle, and Jalen Moore ended the season as Trent Williams backup on the left side. So those are the two young backups at tackle. I don't think that they would move Burford around. I think that they've done that a lot in the past, had guys play inside, outside, inside, outside. They never really gain a real foothold at either. So I think keeping Burford at right guard, just saying, okay, you're the right guard of the future. We want you to be in that spot for the next 10 years or whatever it is. I think that's the smart move. And as far as sort of guys, there's Jason Poe that you mentioned. I think that the 49ers see him as a guard, but he could get reps at center. He's the most athletically gifted of all those guys. He looks like a linebacker when you see him without a shirt on. I mean, it's not that old kind of traditional kind of sloppy offensive lineman body. I mean, he's cut, he's built, he can move. And then there's one guy who's interesting at tackle. His name is Leroy Watson. And he was actually a teammate of Burford's at UT San Antonio. He was a tight end. He was a blocking tight end there that they've converted into an offensive tackle. And he's went from 285 pounds to 315, like in the last, 12 months or so. So he's a project for sure, but he can move. He's got the requisite foot speed. He just needs reps at tackle. He'll be an interesting guy to watch in training camp. Didn't spend training camp with the team in 2022, so we didn't really get a good look at him against, a Jordan Willis or one of the backup defensive ends. So that'll be fun to watch how he's progressed. But that's a sort of a possibility down the line.
I think Zakel's got starter potential, maybe at center, maybe at right guard, but obviously, maybe they'll let Brunskill go. Maybe they'll keep Brendel or Brunskill, one but not the other.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's one or the other with those two. I think if Brendel went, and you're absolutely right, there's so many teams that run the scheme now. You got Bobby Slowick, for example, now running the offense in Houston. He's going to want a center who knows how to run that system. I think the Dolphins have a good center. I'm not sure about the Jets situation, but with LaFleur now going to the Rams, there are all sorts of teams that could use a center. So I agree with you. I think the 49ers were kind of hoping that Brendel came in cheap because he was just such an unknown quantity, but he had such a solid season, compared very well to Alex Mack the year before, that they could be get a little sticker shock on how much he costs to resign. But if he did go, I agree with you. I think Brunskill, then it becomes a priority.
One of my favorite sleepers in free agency is a guy who I know, Nick Allegretti. He's a backup with the Chiefs, but he's 25 or 26, and he was an academic All-American. He's a former wrestler. He wore 73 with the Chiefs. He was kind of their backup guard right tackle, center, versatile, but smart, tough, cheap. So I think that's the guy that I would try to target as a depth piece in free agency. We'll see where he goes. I know Kansas City would probably like to re-sign him. But what do you think about the quarterbacks? What did you take out of the end of the year commentary? I mean, the 49ers rarely tell you exactly how they feel about their players. They kind of like everybody until they part ways. And then it's like, well, maybe they didn't like that guy.